Today we're going to be going through the questions that you've already done on your midterm review sheet. We're going to be focusing on numbers 1 through 25. As you're going over these answers together as a class, if you get something wrong, I want you to erase it and fix it, because this is becoming your study guide that you're going to be able to use to study for our midterm coming up next week. There will be parts where you are allowed to use a calculator, and some of them you cannot use a calculator. The sections we're going over today, 1 through 25, this is not a calculator section. So we're practicing today without calculators because you will not be able to use a calculator on this portion of the midterm. All right, so the first couple questions that we're going to have talks about finding the absolute value. I want you to remember, when we're talking about absolute value, it's asking you how far away something is from 0 on a number line. So let's just focus on this right here. If I were to say, what's the absolute value of 2? You would be trying to figure out how far away 0 is from 2. How many hops away is it? 2. 1, 2. So the absolute value of 2 would be what? 2. It would be 2, okay? Now what about the absolute value of, if I were to have like a negative 3? How far away is negative 3 from 0, class? 3. It is 3 spots away, okay? So the absolute value of negative 3 would be what? 3. It would be 3. The thing I want you to remember is you are never allowed to have a negative absolute value. Okay, let's talk about this first part right here. Find the absolute value. It says a negative absolute value of negative 1 3/4. What should I do with that negative sign on the outside of the absolute value? Gavin? We're just going to drop it down. That's very good. Okay, so that gets dropped down. Now we're going to focus on this part right here, the absolute value of negative 1 3/4. What would that part be? Just plain old 1 3/4, okay? So that is our final answer, negative 1 3/4. Okay, let's go to the next one. Matthew, what did you get for the absolute value of negative 3.2? 3.2 is correct because it is 3.2 places away from 0 on the number line. How many of you would say you got both of those correct when you did this on your own? Excellent. If you did not, that's okay. Now I want you to erase it and fix it so that you have the right study notes as you're studying for this over the weekend. Let's move on to the next part. Find the sum or the difference of the integers. This is something we did long ago, and we had a little song that we sang all the time. Let's sing that song together. Ready, begin. Same sign, add and keep, different sign, subtract. Take the sign of the larger number, then you'll be exact. There was also another saying we said all the time, and it went like this. Every number has a sign, and that sign is directly in front of that number. 32, is that a positive or a negative? It is a positive. There's always an understood positive there. So looking at this, that's a positive, that's a negative. Same sign or different sign, class? Different sign. Same sign, add and keep, different sign. Subtract and take. So off to the side, because this is not a calculator chapter, you could subtract 48 minus 32. When you do that, what do you get? 16. And I heard a lot of you say negative. Why did we do a negative?
Because 48 is bigger than 32.
You are correct. We always take the sign of the larger number, and 48, as she said, was larger than 32. Very good. The next one says negative 37 minus negative 15. Einar, what do I have there? A double negative. What happens to a double negative, Einar? It becomes a huge monster positive. So now I've got negative 37 plus 15. Talila, same sign or different sign?
Different sign.
Okay, same sign, add and keep, different sign, subtract and take. So off to the side, we know we have to be subtracting. Talila, when you subtract, what do you get? Okay, very good, 22. And then she took the sign of the larger number, which was this 37. So your correct answer is negative 22. This midterm right here, the review sheet, has to be turned in on the day of your actual midterm. And this will be worth 10% of your grade, of your actual midterm grade. So you need to make sure to bring this midterm review sheet with you to the midterm. You will be turning it in. And then I'm going to be checking to see, did they do all the work the way that I have taught them in class? So that's why it's very important right now. If you didn't get this work written down like this, go ahead and write it down so that when you turn it in, you can get the credit for having the correct answers on your midterm review sheet. Okay, if I'm going too fast, just tell me to slow down. We can work through it together, okay? But please make sure you are showing the work like I'm doing up here on the board. All right, the next one, find the sum or the difference of the rational numbers. Remember, a rational number is going to be when we have a fraction or a decimal. So what should I do first, Isaac?
Huh? Oh yeah. What you do first is you subtract the 1/28 by the 3/4.
Noah, can you help him?
You turn the negative 1 and 2/8 into a uncommon fraction. I don't know if it's called uncommon, but
What's it called, Jalen?
I don't know what it's called, but I know you have to do it 8 times 1 instead.
Okay, what's it called, Gavin? No, we've already got a mixed number. Matthew, what it's called? Improper fraction, okay? So when I turn negative 1 and 2/8 into an improper fraction, what do I get? Negative 10 over 8 plus 3/4. When I am adding and subtracting fractions, do I need a common denominator? Yes, you have to have a common denominator when adding and subtracting. So what should my common denominator be? 8. How do I turn this 4 into an 8? Multiply it by 2 on the top and on the bottom. Okay, so I'm just going to drop it down and do the work underneath it. I've still got negative 10/8. But when I multiply this out, what does that become, class? Okay, it would be an equivalent fraction of 6/8. Now let's focus on same sign or different sign, class? Different sign. I've got a positive, I have a negative. Same sign, add and keep. Different sign, subtract and take. So when I subtract and take, what do I get? Negative 4/8 because I have to take the sign of the larger number. Is that my final answer? No. What's wrong with it? I've got to reduce it. So what would the answer be? Negative 1/2. Who got that correct on their own? All right, if you did not, that's okay. Looks like a lot of you just erase it, fix it. Remember, your goal is to have the correct answers when you turn this back into me on the day of your actual midterm. Let's go to the next one. Here's an interesting thing. We talked a lot about at the beginning of the year. When we have double signs, a plus right next to a minus, who always wins? The minus always wins. So basically at this point I can get rid of that and I've got negative 5.35 minus 4.02. Same sign or different sign? Same sign, add the numbers, keep the sign. So remember, this is not a calculator section, so off to the side, just go ahead and add these together. And when you do that, Angeline, what do you get? What is it? What'd you say? 9.37. Okay, very good. 9.37. Now, same sign, add and keep. We're going to add the numbers and keep the sign. So what's my final answer? Negative 9.37 because both of those were negative numbers. Okay? Any questions on those two? All right, let's move on to the next ones. Copy and complete this statement. Now, as I glanced through a lot of your papers, when I saw whether or not you did these problems, you forgot to show any work below. There's no work that I can do for the first part at negative 8, but I do want to know if you understand what the absolute value of negative 8 is. Hope, what is the absolute value of negative 8? It is 8. So this is the kind of work that I need to see on a problem like this. I want to see work just like this on your actual midterm, okay? So make sure you're putting this into your notes. What should I write in the blank, Jalen?
Negative 8 or negative 8.
Okay, say again. It's either less than, greater than, or equal to.
Negative 8 is less than 8.
You are correct. Negative 8 is less than 8, so then I'm going to go ahead and stick it up at the top. Negative 8 is less than the absolute value of negative 8. Okay, if you were missing that work, go ahead and fix it for me, please. Let's go on to the next one. Braden, what is the absolute value of 0.5? 0.5 is correct. Now there's something wrong with this right here. One says 0.5 and one says 3/4. What is wrong with that? Why can I not find this answer yet? They're not the same. One's a decimal and one's a fraction. So let's either turn them both into decimals or turn them both into fractions. Which one would you guys prefer to do? Okay, turn them both into a decimal. So we know 0.5. What would 3/4 be as a decimal, class? 0.75. Now that's one of those that you should hopefully know, but if you didn't know it for some reason, you could always do 3 divided by 4, and when you do that, you would still figure out that the answer is 0.75. Remember, this is not a calculator section on the midterm, so you could just do it off to the side if you didn't have that memorized, okay? 0.5 is the same thing as 0.50. So Ava, read it to me from left to right. What should this say? That is correct. And then you'll put it all the way up to the top. So we learned that the absolute value of 0.5 is less than 3/4. For the next part, it says evaluate the expression when h equals -3, w equals 5, and y equals 6. Repeat after me. Plug it in, plug it in. All right, so all we're doing is we are plugging in those numbers for these different letters. Hope, what should I write for the very first one? All right, we're going to put instead -3 minus 6. Hope, same sign or different sign? Same sign. Add the numbers, keep the sign. What do you get? -9 is correct. Raise your hand if you also got -9. Okay, if you didn't, that's okay. Erase it and fix it wherever it was the mistake was made. Hayden, what did you do for the next one?
I plugged it in the numbers.
And what'd you get? Negative. Okay, very good. -5 plus -3. When you add those two together, what do you get? -8 is correct because he had the same sign. You add the numbers and keep the sign. How many of you would say if your midterm was only over that first page, you think you would do pretty well? Excellent. Remember, ask questions if something doesn't seem to be making sense to you. Let's go on to the second page, number 11. Now we have new rules. When finding the product, remember this is the even and odd rule. Does anyone remember what we have learned about the even and the odd rule? What have we learned?
If there's two
There's one
negatives,
negative positive if the amount of negatives is an odd number, then it's a negative.
You're correct. If there's an odd amount of negative numbers, it's going to stay negative. If there's an even amount, then it turns into a positive. Very good job, Hayden. So let's look at the first one. Isaac, what's the answer?
-15.
-15. Good job. Because there was only one, that's an odd number, we have to keep the negative sign. Let's go to the next one. Angeline, is the answer going to be positive or negative? You can see here there's just one negative sign. So is that an even or odd amount of negative signs? That's an odd amount. So should my answer stay negative or turn into a positive? You are correct. It's going to stay negative. So I'm just going to go ahead and drop that negative sign down before I even move on or do anything else. Am I allowed to cross-reduce when multiplying fractions? Yes, you are. Okay, that's the only time you can. Not when you're adding or subtracting or dividing, only when you're multiplying. So Amira, what should I cross-reduce? Excellent. When you multiply that out, what do you get? Correct. And can that be simplified? -1/2 is correct. All right, and that is how you are allowed to multiply fractions together. All right, as I just walked around and looked at the answers that you got, most people were able to find the correct answer on 13. If you're working from left to right, what is -4 times +2? -8, okay? So we've got -8 times -3. Two negative signs, so the answer has to be positive. So the answer is 24. All right, this next one is where people messed up. As I walked around, I saw most people either had +9 or -9. Some people had a 6 in there too. Guys, what does -3 squared mean?
3 times.
Okay, it means -3 times -3 because you are multiplying whatever is in the parentheses 2 times. Now as I look at that, now listen, this is a piece of info that I want in your notes. I want you to remember. So if you accidentally forgot to put that in there, fit it in there, squeeze it in there somewhere, okay? 2 negatives multiplied together always equals a positive. So what's the answer going to be? +9. Once again, if you don't have that work shown, please slip it into your notes so that you can have that when you're studying for your midterm. So as I'm looking at this next one, we're finding the quotient. We're still using the even and the odd rule, and Reese told us -9 divided by 3 does equal -3. Now let's go on to the next one. Am I ever allowed to divide a fraction? No. What's the method we have to use? KFC. Just for the sake of your notes, if you would, to the side of that, I want you guys to write KFC to help you remember what we've got to do when we are dividing fractions. So we keep the first one, flip the second one, and change the operation. Very good. All right. Noah, help me to cross reduce.
You turn the 4 into a 1, and the 8 into a 2, and then the 3 into a 1, and the 9 into a 3.
And what's your answer?
2 over 3.
Okay. And is it a positive or a negative 2/3?
Negative.
It is negative because there was only one negative sign there. The answer has to stay negative. How many of you were able to get 16 correct? All right. How many of you would say you forgot about the KFC? All right. If you did, erase it and fix it. All right. For the next section, it says to write the mixed number as a decimal. How many of you would say, listen, I have memorized, I know what decimal 1/4 is? Okay, a few of you would say you have not done that. So if you haven't done that, you would want to turn this into a what? Improper fraction. What would this be as an improper fraction? 21 over 4. Talila, what did you do then after you got 21 over 4? Okay, you divided 21 divided by 4. We know that 5 goes into it. Okay, 5.25. How many of you would say you also got 5.25? Excellent. Who would say you did it this same exact way that we just did it? Okay, how many of you would say that you kind of did it more like mental math? You knew it in your head. Okay, and either one is fine. This is a problem you would not have to show work, but you can show work. Okay, let's go to the next one. Who wants to do problem 18 for me? Ava, how'd you do it? Okay, you changed it to an improper fraction. What did you get as an improper fraction? Not 28 over 10. No. 10 times 3 is plus 2. I think you subtracted 2 there. 32, okay? So it would be -32 over 10. All right, then once again, remember this is not a calculator section, so if you need to, just pull it off to the side and go ahead and divide it there. When you do that, guys, what do you get? All right, and is the answer going to be positive or negative? It will be negative because it started off as a negative mixed number over here. Then we know that when we get our final answer, we will also want it to be a negative number. So -3.2 is correct. A lot of people also have memorized that 2/10 means 0.2. Okay, so that one could be one that you didn't have to show work, or you could have showed work if you did it just like we did there. All right, for this next problem, a shark is 60 feet below the surface of the water. It swims up and it jumps out of the water to reach a height of 18 feet above the surface. What is the distance that the shark traveled? Write an equation to help you solve the problem. So what I also like to do with these kind of problems, how many of you would say you actually drew a picture yourself? Okay, if you didn't, I want you to put this into your notes for me now. Here's the sea level, which would be like a 0 if I were on a number line. And it tells us the shark is where to start with? 60 feet below. What integer represents 60 feet below? A -60 feet. And then it says it jumps. How high does it jump? 18 feet above the water. Is that a positive 18 or a negative 18? A positive 18, okay? So now we are just trying to figure out if it started here and it jumped all the way up there, what's the distance that he traveled in that time? What would it be, guys? Okay, here's how you can do that. If you didn't draw the picture, you take your bigger number. What is the bigger number? Not the bigger absolute value, but the bigger number. 18 or negative 60? 18. Positive numbers are always bigger. So you would take your positive number, or the bigger number, 18, and subtract the smaller number. This is how we find distance between things. What's the smaller number? Negative 60. Remember, I want to see this in your notes when you turn this back into me because it's going to help you with studying. What do I have there, guys? Okay, two negatives always gets turned into a positive. So now we're left with 18 plus 60. What is 18 plus 60? 78. And we need units attached, so it's 78 feet. Who would say you got that correct on your own when you did it? Very good. All right, now it did ask you to write an equation, so make sure with that you're kind of showing me the work of how you got it. Next problem, the temperature is negative 10 degrees Celsius at 5 p.m. 6 hours later, the temperature dropped by 13 degrees. What is the temperature at 11 p.m.? Write an expression to help solve the problem. What did we start out as, guys? Negative 10 degrees Celsius. What happened after that?
It went down.
This is the key part. It dropped by 13 degrees. So what should I do now? Okay, minus 13 degrees. And that's how we find the answer. Guys, what's negative 10 minus 13 degrees? Same sign, add and keep. Add the numbers, keep the sign. Negative 23. You got to think. If you told me the answer was 3 or negative 3, does that really make sense? It's supposed to have dropped by 13 degrees, so you want it to drop down. So the correct answer is negative 23 degrees Celsius. On your exam, there will be some vocab words that you're going to want to know. Just the girls, what is a term with a variable in it called? A variable term, that is correct. Check your spelling and make sure you've got it spelled correctly. Anybody who's going out of town for Christmas, what is another name for a letter? A variable. If you have already purchased a Christmas gift for somebody else, what is the number part of the variable term? A coefficient. Ooh, it sounds like you guys have done some shopping. If you have not purchased anything for anybody else, what is a number that stands alone? Whoa, sounds like more of you still have some serious shopping to do, okay? So, important information. Please make sure you know the answers to those specific words. Moving on. What are the variable terms in the expression? Something that I like to see when we're doing this is underlining the like terms. This is the x family, and this is the constant family, the numbers that stand alone. If you forgot to underline and circle yours, go ahead and fix that for me now. It has now asked us the variable terms. What is a variable term, class? A term with a variable in it. So what are my two variable terms? 6x and 7x. Very good. Let's look at the next one. This is asking us for the constants. Let's underline like terms. Just the girls, what am I underlining? Girls, what am I circling? What am I circling? Negative 3 and negative 4. Just the girls, what are my constants? Okay, remember to keep the negative there because every number has a sign, and that sign is directly in front of that number. Next up, Noah, what should I underline and circle?
You should underline 60 and negative 3d, and circle 5 and negative 4.
Excellent. And the question, Huang, is what are my coefficients? Everybody, what's a coefficient? The number part of a variable term. Huang, what are they? 6 and negative 3 is correct. How many of you feel pretty confident you would do excellent on that section? All right, hands are down. I just want to do two last problems with you today. We're going to underline and circle these. Einar, what should I underline and circle? Okay, tell me which ones to underline. Excellent. What should I circle? Negative 20 and positive 15. If you forgot to underline and circle 24 and 25, go and do that for me now. And I'm going to come around to see what answers you got. All right, as I walked around, I saw more than half of you did get this correct. Guys, let's combine. What should I combine first, the constant or the variable term? The variable term always goes first. Okay, that's the one with the letter in it. What's 4r plus 2r? 6r. What's negative 20 plus 15? Negative 5. A lot of you had plus a negative. I just want one sign there, okay? Don't give me those double signs. So 6r minus 5 was the correct answer. Isaac, what should I underline and circle for the next one?
You should underline negative 5y and negative 2y.
And circle?
Then circle 6 and 3.
Very good. Okay, combine first the variable terms. Hope, what's negative 5y minus 2y?
Negative 7y.
Negative 7y. Matthew, what is 6 plus 3? 9. Is that a positive or a negative? Positive. So we're going to have a plus connecting them. How many of you would say you got both of those correct? All right. Tomorrow we will focus on 26 and then we'll move on from there to continue going over it. But hopefully this was helpful for you today, going over problems 1 through 25.